Hi, my name is Eric Bright, and I'm an 8th grade math teacher in Charleston, Illinois, and I'm just here to share some thoughts with you about writing curriculum really for Common Core with the focus, coherence, and rigor that the Common Core demands. How can we write some curriculum to meet those demands? Um, and as always, with any of my talks, keep in mind that this is just me, and from my research and my digging into things, you are the classroom professional in your school, so make sure you run everything through your professional filter and you do what's best for your kids. Don't just blindly follow what I have laid out here, but hopefully this can be some good discussion points and a good thought process for you to walk through as you're designing curriculum to meet the rigors of Common Core standards. If you need to contact me, my email address is right down here at the bottom, and you're welcome to shoot me an email with any questions you have. So I'm going to move forward. Throughout this talk, we're going to be looking at several different things. We're mainly going to be drawing information from Common Core's publishers criteria, which, as I was just searching for it online, Common Core has put out their new website, and they've eliminated the ease of access to their publishers criteria. So right now, the only way that I can find that you can access it is just Google for the publishers criteria. It's still actually on the Common Core website. They just don't have a link to it from their main site. So you can search for those things. We're going to be drawing a lot from that. So once we kind of go through the shifts that Common Core lays out with focus, coherence, and rigor, then we're going to break it down into the different components of how do we apply those shifts into writing curriculum through all the miscellaneous steps, and then towards the end, hopefully we'll have some time to talk about the model curriculum that the ISBE is developing here in Illinois. All right, so the first thing that the first shift that Common Core puts out there is focus. And the publisher's criteria for K through 8 puts it this way: significantly narrowing the scope of content. And they're teaching less, learning more. And this is so that we can go deeper. The idea is that our curriculum in the past has been a mile wide and an inch deep, and so trying to correct that now by pulling back on some of the content, at least on the amount of content, so that we can go deeper into the content and really understand it better. The way that we've been teaching it has obviously not been successful. Go ask any person on the street any math question beyond 6th grade that you want, and they're probably going to get it wrong. And that's because we have trained them to memorize it for the short term for the test, and not actually given them the tools that they need to be able to understand the mathematics and apply it. And so this whole idea of focus, so that we can narrow it down, hopefully will help with that, or at least is designed to help with that. And in Illinois, at least, we had the option to tack on up to 15% additional content to the Common Core standards, and Illinois chose not to do so. And what we were told as a Common Core state trainers here in Illinois was that we teach the standards and the standards only. That if we have some other pet projects and things like that, they're going to have to go by the wayside, because the standards, this is our job now, is to teach these standards, whether we like it or not. So we've got some instructional implications then for this focus issue, that if we're going to design instruction and provide instruction for students with focus, then, as I already mentioned, we're going to have to let go of kind of the pet projects maybe that we have. At the workshop that I was at, where we were getting trained, one of the examples they did is that they kind of picked on the elementary school a little bit and said, oh, I've always done a unit on apples. Well, too bad, apples is actually not part of the Common Core standards, so maybe you can use apples as a context, but make sure that we're actually hitting the standards. So we got to keep those standards first in mind. And this also means we're going to choose rabbit trails wisely in class. Students are naturally inquisitive, and they will ask good questions, and some of those rabbit trails are great to go down, and they're going to be able to reinforce content. But some other rabbit trails, we might have to say, you know what, we need to hold off on that discussion, and let's veer off in this other way. So what's going to add to the focus even in your discussion in your classrooms? Also, the publisher's criteria, and every workshop I've ever been to with any of our content specialists or working with the ISBE on designing model curriculum, everybody has said enrichment is at grade level. It's not above. We are not supposed to be taking students and pushing them ahead into content of future grade levels, because all that does is exacerbate the problem at the higher levels, because and it promotes the kind of quick speed through memorize for the test type of learning as well. So again, we're going for depth here. So if a student has the basics of a concept, if you really feel like they're meeting the standard already, great, drill down, go deeper, enrich, but staying within those grade level content standards, not outside of those. Don't go above. And that's in the K-8 publishers criteria right there on page 13 of that document. Remediation is the same story. They've really talked about how if we're going to remediate something, we need to be doing it within the grade level standards, so that if a student is struggling with, let's say, integers and fractions, maybe when we're trying to teach equations, then the idea is not to shut down equations, which is a grade level standard, but instead incorporate some more of those integers, some more of those fractions in there, so that we have more practice and that we can be learning the fractions and the integers in the context of equations. And actually that's going to build up to our next talk, which is our next section of the talk, which is about coherence. And so that will kind of tie things together. So again, to keep the focus on these grade level standards, we're not going to just shut down the grade level standards and go backwards. Instead, we're going to remediate within those grade level standards and try and bring students up from there. Now, a lot of this, whether it's enrichment or whether it's remediation or actually just the plan in general for your curriculum at your school, is going to be taken care of with careful curriculum cultivation. So in other words, you really got to plan it. We can't be flying by the seat of our pants with the overall big picture of where our curriculum is heading. Instead, we got to take some time to really narrow it in and focus in on what it is that we're supposed to be teaching. Now, there's some assessment implications as well for focus. If we're going to assess with focus, again, we're not going to be assessing above grade level standards, okay, or below grade level standards. So that probably means that if you've been putting extra credit on your tests that have to do with things that are above grade level, well, those should not be on the test. That's not actually assessing grade level standards. We need to focus in on the grade level standards. How well does the student do on the grade level standard? Do they meet it? Do they exceed it? Are they doing really well? Where do they fit kind of on this continuum based on the focus? Okay, and this is within an assessment. This also means that you may have to give partial credit, because partial credit is going to give us a better picture of grade level content mastery. I'm just going to flip over here to another slide from another PowerPoint I've got going here, but I'm going to be talking about assessing with integrity in a different talk. But here's an example of two students' work. Pieces of work here that you can see, and the one on the right got the correct answer here of -4, of course, but did it completely wrong. Thought that 2x plus 1 was 3x, so they combined like terms there, even though they aren't like terms. And unfortunately, if we go, oh, well, you got the right answer and that's the only thing I care about, then we're actually promoting this better lucky than good idea. Where this student over here on the left understands inverse operations. Knew to get rid of this plus 1, we subtract 1 from both sides, and knew to get rid of the times by 2, we would divide by 2. The only problem is when they did -7 minus 1, they got -6. So they have an integer issue, which is below grade level standards, but the at grade level standards about inverse operations and two-step equations, they've actually got down. And so that's a student on the left that I would want to be able to assess with integrity and with focus, and say this student actually has the grade level standards down as far as inverse operations. They just need some remediation within the integer domain. Okay, and then I already mentioned that the extra credit probably should not exist, at least as far as extra credit is meant to bolster a student's grade. If it's meant to inflate a student's grade, then that's all it is. It's grade inflation. Okay, so that if we're putting on problems like, do you remember when your birthday is, or did you bring in a box of Kleenexes at the beginning of the year, did you wear a red shirt on the field trip day, none of those things actually have focus as far as assessment goes, because they're not focusing in on the grade level standards. They're instead focusing in on these other things that have nothing to do with mathematics. A student wears a red shirt, suddenly they magically understand math better? No, I don't really think so. So the focus is lacking in those types of extra credit situations. So in general, just as a a very blanket statement, I would say there should never be any extra credit at all. One other topic about focus is this traditional versus the integrated pathway, and ISBE has recently met with some higher ed. I think they had over 50 higher ed representatives meeting with the ISBE, and all of them were agreeable and happy to have either the traditional or the integrated pathway. So the answer to the question of will colleges accept the integrated pathway? Yes, they will. They understand that it's just the same content, just delivered, in a slightly different way. They're just mixed differently. So as far as the college goes, it doesn't matter to them. State laws are supposed to be changing to allow for the integrated pathway, because right now it says that every student will have Algebra 1 and a course about geometry, but those could be changing, and in fact March 28th of 2014 they just introduced a new bill that would kind of take care of that. It hasn't passed yet, and who knows if it actually will, but hopefully some of these things are going to be changing, and that would of course change how administrators have to put in their high school course codes and the level of rigor and things like that. But traditional and integrated, both are going to be viable options for us. The ISBE model curriculum is only the integrated, and they will only be doing the integrated at this point. There will be no support for the traditional pathway at the high school. And if you did choose the traditional pathway, which a lot of schools still are staying traditional, please keep in mind that the traditional pathway is not the same. So if you've got an Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2 textbook right now, they do not meet the Common Core standards. In fact, there still are not textbooks out there that meet the Common Core standards with the level of focus that we need. Some of the things in there, sure, are going to be the same, but many of them are different. So if you're looking to establish that focus, you're going to have to go back and really dig into what is the traditional, because it is definitely not the same as what we think of as traditional mathematics. So I believe I'm going to head into coherence next, so you can pick up with me on the next talk.